I bankrupted my own family in under 10 minutes, not with shouting, not with lawyers screaming across a table, not even with anger, with silence, with signatures, with timing. And the worst part? They invited me to watch. Everyone clapped when my sister took my company. What they did not know was I had already set the price for everything they were about to lose. My name is Evelyn Hart. The chandelier above us glittered like nothing real could survive under it. Crystal light, soft music. Polished silverware placed just right. The kind of dinner where people pretend everything is perfect because it looks expensive enough to be. My mother smiled first. That calm, rehearsed smile she used whenever she was about to say something that would hurt me and call it necessary. She slid a leather folder across the table, not toward me, toward my sister. I did not touch it. I did not need to. I had seen enough contracts in my life to recognize a transfer agreement from 3 feet away. My sister, Clara Hart, opened it like it was a birthday gift, slow, careful, almost respectful. That almost made me laugh because respect would have required hesitation. She had none. My father, Richard Hart, leaned back in his chair, one arm draped casually over the side like he was watching a deal close on television. "You have carried this long enough," he said, looking at me like I was an employee being transitioned out. "It is time your sister had stability." Stability. That was the word he chose for 13 years of my work, my company, my systems, my sleepless nights fixing shipments at 2 a.m, while everyone else slept through the consequences of mistakes they never even knew existed, reduced to a word that sounded polite enough to clap for. And people did. They actually did. Glasses lifted, smiles widened. Someone at the far end of the table said, "This is beautiful," keeping it in the family. I felt my pulse in my throat. Not fast, not panicked, heavy. Like something inside me was counting. Clara placed her hand over the folder, claiming it, not questioning it, not apologizing, not even looking at me. Just accepting, like it had always been hers. My father turned back to me, his tone shifting into something almost instructional. "You will stay on, of course," he said. "You will work under her now. She has children. She needs something secure." There it was, the justification, not logic, not fairness. Emotion dressed up as responsibility. I could feel it then. That familiar pressure they had used my entire life. The quiet expectation that I would absorb it, adapt, carry it, like I always had. For a second, I almost did. My fingers tightened slightly around the stem of my glass. The cold surface grounded me, kept me from reacting too fast, because reacting fast is how you lose, and I do not lose. Not like that, so I laughed, just once. Soft enough to pass as acceptance. I nodded, stood up, smoothed my dress like nothing inside me had shifted. But everything had, because in that exact moment, something became very clear. This was not about the company. It never was. They did not just want what I built. They wanted control over the person who built it. They thought they had it. That was their mistake. I pushed my chair in slowly, precisely, the way you do when you want people to believe nothing is wrong. No scene, no raised voice, no shattered glass, just composure. They relaxed immediately. You can always tell when people think they have won. Their shoulders drop, their eyes soften. They stop watching you closely. My mother reached for her wine again. Clara started flipping through the pages. My father looked away. That was when I knew, not what I had lost, but exactly how far they were willing to go, and more importantly, what they were about to take responsibility for. I walked out of that room without another word, not because I had nothing to say, but because I finally knew exactly what I was going to do next. The cold air outside hit my face harder than anything that had just happened inside. I stood under the hotel awning for a few seconds, staring at nothing, while the sound of applause still echoed faintly behind the glass doors. It sounded distant now, muted, like it belonged to someone else's life. Not mine, because the moment I stepped outside, something shifted. They did not just take my company. They removed the last reason I kept pretending they were my family. I started walking, no destination, just movement. My heels clicked sharply against the pavement, each step louder than the last, like my body was trying to keep up with a decision my mind had already made. 3 blocks later, I pushed open the door of a 24-hour diner. Warm light, cheap coffee, no one looking too closely at anyone else. Perfect. I slid into a booth near the window and wrapped my hands around a chipped ceramic mug the waitress set down without asking questions. That was when I made the only call that mattered. Tessa. She picked up on the second ring. Where are you? Diner on 8th, I said a pause. I am coming. She walked in 20 minutes later, still wearing her hospital scrubs under a long wool coat, her hair pulled back like she had not had time to think about anything except getting there. She slid into the seat across from me and took one look at my face. What did they do? No small talk, no hesitation, just the question that mattered, so I told her. Everything, the folder, the applause. My father's voice, Clara's hand resting on something she did not build but accepted anyway. I did not cry. Not once. I just laid it out piece by piece, like evidence. Tessa listened without interrupting. Her eyes did not soften. They sharpened. When I finished, she leaned back slightly, studying me in a way that made me uncomfortable for exactly 2 seconds. Then she asked, What do you want, Evelyn? Not what should you do, not what makes sense, not what is fair. What do you want? The question hit harder than anything my family had done, because for 13 years, I had never asked myself that. I had asked what was needed, what was expected, what would keep everything running, but not what I wanted. I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out, because the truth was not simple, it was not polite, and it was definitely not something my family would have approved of. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. That surprised me. I want out, I said finally. My voice came out quieter than I expected, but clearer. I want something that has my name on it, something no one can vote me out of, something they cannot touch just because they decided I have done enough. Tessa nodded once. Good, that was it. No pity, no overreaction, just approval. Then the second wave hit, fear, sharp, immediate, physical. What if I fail, I asked, before I could stop myself. What if I walk away from everything and they are right? What if I was never the reason it worked? There it was, the doubt they had planted in me for years. Tessa leaned forward, reached across the table, and slid my phone toward me. Then fail after you try, she said. Not before. I stared at the screen. My contacts, my messages, my entire life, organized in small, glowing icons. For a moment, my thumb hovered above the screen. Then I started. I deleted the company shortcut from my favorites, removed myself from the family operations group chat, archived every thread that blurred the line between obligation and when it felt small, almost stupid. But the second I finished, something inside me loosened, like I had cut a wire that had been pulling at me for years. I exhaled slowly. And for the first time that night, I was not thinking about what they took. I was thinking about what they did not. They think they took everything, I said. Tessa tilted her head slightly. Did they? I shook my head. No. Because the truth was simple once I allowed myself to see it. They took the name, the office, the illusion, but they did not take the system. They did not take the relationships. They did not take the part of the business that actually worked when everything else failed. That part was me. And that was when the shift happened, not emotional, strategic. I sat up straighter, reached for a napkin, and grabbed a pen from the edge of the table. At the top, I wrote one question. What can they take? And what can they not? The answers came fast. They could take the company. They could take the title. They could take the version of the story that made them look generous, but they could not take my knowledge, my client trust, my reputation under pressure, and most importantly, my understanding of every single weakness they had just inherited. I stared at the list, then I smiled, not because I felt better, but because I finally saw the shape of the situation clearly. They thought they had won, but what they actually did was step into something they did not understand, and I knew exactly how it worked. I folded the napkin once, then again, carefully, like I was sealing something into place. Tessa, I said, looking up. They did not just take the company. She raised an eyebrow. What did they take? I held her gaze. They took responsibility. And that was the moment I stopped being their daughter and started becoming their creditor. The next morning, I did not wake up rested. I woke up clear, not calm, not peaceful sharp, like every thought had been stripped down to its most useful form. My phone was face down on the kitchen counter, still buzzing occasionally with messages I had no intention of reading. I did not need to see them to know what they said. My mother would be concerned. My father would be disappointed. Clara would want to talk when I calmed down. That word again. Calm. As if what happened last night was an emotional reaction, instead of a calculated decision. I flipped the phone over anyway. 3 missed calls, 2 messages. I opened the last one, Clara. We should talk when you calm down. I stared at it for a few seconds, screen, and set the phone aside, because for the first time in a long time, their version of reality no longer interested me. I made coffee, strong, bitter, unapologetic, the kind that forces you to wake up whether you are ready or not. Then I opened my laptop, no hesitation this time, no second guessing, just action. Because once you see the structure of a problem clearly, you either move or you get buried under it, and I had no intention of being buried. I started with the numbers, not the polished reports, the real ones, the ones buried under layers of family oversight and strategic adjustments. Cash flow, liabilities, outstanding loans, vendor contracts. It did not take long because I had already seen pieces of it before. I just had never allowed myself to connect them. Now I did, and the picture that formed was almost insulting in its simplicity. They had been preparing to take control for months, not by building anything, by shifting weight, small decisions. Quit approvals Loans taken under expansion narratives, contracts signed with risk hidden behind urgency. They thought they were being smart. They thought they were positioning themselves. What they were actually doing was stacking pressure on a structure they did not understand. I leaned back slightly, eyes still on the screen, and then I saw it, the thread, the one thing that tied everything together. Debt, not just any debt, specific, structured, late, and most importantly, transferable. I opened a separate document and started mapping it out, loan sources, terms, triggers, clauses most people skip because they assume they will never matter, but they always matter. Just not when people expect them to. That was the first time I smiled that morning, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. They had taken loans assuming they would control the outcome. They never considered what would happen if someone else controlled the pressure. I reached for my phone again, scrolled past the messages, found a contact I had not used in almost 2 years, Daniel Reeves, corporate finance, concise, discreet, expensive, exactly what I needed. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Evelyn. No surprise in his voice. He always sounded like that, like nothing could catch him off guard. I need information, I said. A pause. Or execution? I looked back at the screen. At the structure I had just mapped. At some point, both, I replied. That was enough. With what timeline? He asked. I checked the date, then thought about the dinner, the applause, the way they relaxed the moment I did not fight back. Soon, I said, but not yet. Another pause then. Understood. By midday, I had everything I needed. Not guesses, not assumptions, facts, the primary lender, the secondary holders, the conditions under which control could shift, and most importantly, the window. Because there is always a window, a moment where everything is technically stable. But one move changes everything. That was where they were, balanced, unaware, confident. I closed my laptop slowly. Because the realization settling in was not emotional, it was structural. I did not need to fight them. I did not need to expose them. I did not even need to confront them. All I needed to do was let them take full ownership and then remove what had been holding everything together. The next part was not complicated, just precise. I drafted 5 emails, no announcements, no dramatic language, just direct communication. I had launched a new independent firm. I was available for specialized support, confidential, immediate 5 people, that was it. Not because I did not know more, but because I knew exactly which relationships mattered. I hovered over the send button for a second, then pressed it, one by one, no hesitation, because this was not a gamble, it was positioning. By late afternoon, the first reply came in, short, direct. When can we talk? I did not smile, but something settled, not relief. Confirmation. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out over the city. Everything looked the same. Traffic, people, movement. But my place in it had shifted completely, because for the first time, April was not reacting to what my family did. I was deciding what happened next. And they had no idea, not about the structure, not about the timing, not about the fact that every move they had made to take control had brought them closer to something they could not survive. I picked up my phone again, scrolled past Clara's message, past my father's missed call, and opened a blank note, one sentence, final I typed. They think they won. Then I added, they have no idea what they actually took. I saved it, locked the screen, and set the phone down, because the next time I saw them, it would not be as their daughter. It would not be as their employee. It would be at the exact moment they realized the cost of everything they had just claimed. They invited me back 2 weeks later, not out of guilt, not to apologize, to celebrate. Clara's official appointment as CEO, a private event, select clients, a few investors. Family friends who had watched me build everything, and were now ready to applaud someone else for inheriting it. I almost admired the timing, almost. The venue was smaller this time, more intimate, more controlled, which made it worse, because this was not just a transfer anymore. This was confirmation. They were not second-guessing what they did. They were proud of it. I arrived 10 minutes late, on purpose, long enough for them to settle into the illusion. Long enough for Clara to start believing it. The room was already warm with conversation when I stepped in. Laughter, glasses clinking, the low hum of people congratulating someone who had never earned what they were celebrating. And then, silence. It spread slowly like a ripple. One person noticing me, then another, until the entire room shifted. Eyes turned, conversations paused. Clara was standing near the center, a glass of champagne in her hand, mid-sentence. She froze when she saw me, just for a second, then she smiled, too quickly, too confidently, like she had practiced that expression in the mirror. "Evelyn," she said, lifting her glass slightly, "I am glad you came." I walked toward her, steady, measured, every step deliberate. I could feel the attention in the room, tightening, waiting for something. Drama. Emotion, a scene. They were not going to get that. I would not miss it, I said. My voice was calm, even controlled. That unsettled them more than anger ever could. My father stepped in then, placing a hand lightly on Clara's shoulder like he was presenting something valuable. "We are glad you decided to be reasonable," he said. Reasonable. There it was again. The word they used when I agreed to disappear quietly. I looked at him for a moment, then nodded slightly. Of course. A few more people approached, polite smiles, careful distance, no one quite sure what role I was supposed to play now. Former owner, current subordinate, or something else they could not define yet. Clara raised her glass again. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but just a little too rehearsed. "This company has always been about family, about continuity, about building something that lasts beyond one person." I almost smiled at that, almost. She kept going. Words about vision, about growth, about the future, none of it grounded in reality, because she did not understand what she was talking about. Not really. And then she said it. "This is just the beginning." That was my cue. I stepped forward, not abruptly, not aggressively, just enough to shift the center of attention. "Congratulations," I said. The room went still again. Clara turned toward me, her smile tightening. "Thank you," she replied. I let a small pause settle, long enough for curiosity to sharpen, long enough for discomfort to begin. Then I continued. "Now let me show you what it actually costs." Confusion flickered across her face. My father frowned slightly. That was when the doors opened. 2 people walked in, one of them, Daniel, the other, legal. No raised voices, no dramatic entrance, just quiet authority. The kind that does not need to announce itself. Daniel stopped beside me, gave a small nod. Everything was already in motion. The documents were placed on the table neatly, precisely. No theatrics, just paper, and consequences. "What is this?" Clara asked, her voice tightening. I did not look at her. Ownership, I said. Then I finally met her eyes. Comes with obligations. My father stepped forward, irritation replacing confusion. If this is some kind of stunt, it is not, Daniel said calmly. That stopped him because Daniel did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He opened the folder, turned it toward them. Outstanding debt obligations, he said, triggered under current control structure. Silence, heavy, immediate. Clara looked down. Her expression shifted slowly, from confidence to confusion to something sharper. Wait, she said. This is not. It is, I said. My father grabbed the papers, scanning faster. His breathing changed, subtle, but I saw it. This is incorrect, he said. We would have been informed. You were, I replied. You just did not understand what you were reading. That landed, hard. A phone buzzed, then another, then several. Clara looked down at hers. Her face went pale. My card, she whispered. It is not working. One of the investors stepped back. Another checked his own phone. The room shifted again. Not curiosity this time. Distant. What did you do? My father demanded. His voice was louder now, not controlled anymore. I held his gaze, did not raise mine, did not match his energy, because I did not need to. Nothing illegal, I said. A pause, then. I just stopped protecting you. That was the moment it broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. Clara's hand dropped from her glass. It hit the table, did not shatter, but the sound echoed. No, she said, shaking her head slightly. No, this is temporary. We can fix this. I tilted my head slightly. Of course you can. A small pause, then I added, You have the company. Hope brief, desperate. Then I finished. Just not what made it valuable. That was when they understood, not everything, but enough. The clients, the systems, the relationships, the invisible structure that kept everything running. Gun, or rather, no longer theirs. I stepped back, no anger, no satisfaction on my face, just completion, because I did not destroy them. I simply let them carry what they insisted on taking, and for the first time, they felt the weight of it. The room did not recover after that, not immediately, not gracefully. People did not argue. They did not defend Clara. They did not question the documents sitting on that table. They stepped back, quietly, carefully, like distance alone could protect them from being associated with what was unfolding. That was the part no one ever talks about, not the moment things fall apart, but the moment everyone else decides not to stand next to you while it does. I did not stay long. There was nothing left to say, no speech, no explanation, no victory lap. I walked out the same way I walked in, calm, controlled, finished. The fallout started within hours, not days, not weeks, hours. The first client terminated their contract before midnight. The second followed the next morning. By the end of the week, there was no operation left to stabilize. Because the company they thought they owned was never just a company, it was a system, a network, a set of relationships built under pressure that could not be transferred with a signature. And without it, everything collapsed exactly the way it was designed to. I did not interfere. I did not accelerate it. I simply let it happen. My phone rang more in those first few days than it had in months. My mother called 3 times the first night, then again the next morning. Her messages shifted quickly, from confusion to concern, to something closer to accusation. Went too far. That was the one she repeated, over and over. Clara sent messages too, shorter, less controlled. I did not know. Evelyn, please. We can fix this. My father did not call. He sent one message, just one. This is not over. I read all of them. And then I put the phone down, because for the first time in my life, AP did not feel responsible for fixing what they had broken. 2 weeks later, I signed my first major contract under my new company. No announcement, no celebration, just work, the kind that actually mattered. The client did not ask about the old company. They did not mention Clara. They did not reference the situation at all. They just looked at me and said, "We trust you." That was enough. More than enough. I moved into a new office a month later, smaller, mine, no shared ownership, no quiet expectations hiding behind polite conversations, just structure, clarity, control. I heard things, of course. You always do. The company was still technically operating on paper, but without the clients, without the system, without the people who knew how to hold it together under pressure. It was just a name and a debt. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that dinner. The chandelier, the applause, the moment they believed they had finally taken something from me. And I realize something now that I did not fully understand back then. They were not trying to hurt me, not intentionally. They were trying to secure themselves at my expense. And when that stopped working, they called it betrayal. I never called them back, not because I was angry, not because I needed distance, but because there was nothing left to negotiate. They thought I owed them loyalty. They thought I would keep carrying them, absorbing the pressure, fixing what they did not understand, like I always had. But loyalty is not something you can take. And I was done giving it to people who only recognized its value when it was gone. I did not destroy them. I did not take anything from them that was not already theirs. I simply stopped holding everything together, and that was enough. So tell me, if you were sitting in that room, watching everything you built handed to someone else, would you have walked away quietly, or would you have made sure they felt exactly what it cost to take it?